All right. Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? I hope everybody is having a good week. Last week, we talked a little bit about debt myths and about credit history and credit health. So hopefully that you're going to have a chance to review that. If you didn't get a chance to watch it live, all the replays are out there on the Facebook group page, as well as on the RetireWise YouTube page as well. You can go out there and review any of the past ones. They'll be out there for you to go back in case you miss it on Thursday nights. So tonight, we're going to talk about building an emergency fund, what that means, and then a little preview into nine core principles around in the Bible about money. Kind of a little teaser for that. So let's dive in. We're still kind of going through the core basics of core financial principles. We're laying the foundation. We talked about budgeting. We talked about debt reduction, how to control your debt, credit health, tracking. All these kind of things are core fundamentals. You got to have the core fundamentals down and be good stewards of that and have that principle down before you can move on to I don't want to call it more advanced things, but to things where you're doing retirement planning or you're doing investments and you're making your money work for you, as well as glorifying God at the same time. So again, if you guys have any questions about things that we've talked about in the past, DM me, email me, hit me up, whatever. Happy to help. Hope you guys are doing good with your tracking and your budgeting. Hopefully you have that down and are moving forward. So let's go down and dive into building an emergency fund. So the emergency fund is generally done after you've got your debt paid down, right? So once your debt is under control and you have that paid down, you've gone through that, then you can start working on the emergency funds. That's kind of the next step, right? So what is an emergency fund? Well, simply that, it's for emergencies, and every year, and it seems like we have a lot lately, there's all kinds of emergencies, whether it's natural disasters, whether it's job loss, whether it's health issues, whether it's things with the house. There's different levels of emergencies. So there's a lot of things to prepare for. So let's dive into it a little bit. I'm going to present my screen here again and go through a doc that I'm going to be posting after this broadcast. Go out there and download it. You'll be able to go through it and read through the whole thing. So I'm just going to go through parts of it, the core parts of it, and then you can read more details. All right, so saving for emergency fund. I like what I have put in here. It's not having ones like your car parked in a forest during a tornado and hoping nothing hits it. Well, you got to do when it comes to finances. Well, you definitely need to be prepared. And while we all believe in prayer and that God's going to take care of us, but He also wants us to be good stewards. And we got to take care of ourselves as well and our families around us. So emergency funds. How big should this emergency fund be? Well, most of the time you're going to hear 3 months to 6 months, and that's really what I follow as well. 3 months worth of expenses at minimum. 6 months is more ideal. That is if you're employed. If you're with an employer, if you're self-employed, you generally want to go a little bit more than that, because when you're self-employed, you tend to have more ups and downs and dips. And also, if something happens to your business or something happens to you where you cannot do your business, you may be subject to longer periods of time when you're stuck in an emergency. So 3 months minimum, 6 months is more preferably, and you want to get that build up. So, and actually you want to have two different emergency funds. The first one is for short term. The second one is for long term. The short term ones are for more things like, your car broke down or you got to fix an appliance or get a new appliance. That can be anywhere from $500 to $1,500 or so, depending upon, your lifestyle, your budget. So you can kind of gauge that. That's your short term one that you can dip into quickly for those quick short hit emergencies, right? The second one is your long term fund. That's the 3 to 6 months, right? Set your first goal at 3 and then try to extend it up to 6. What a lot of times I do with people is we'll get to the 3 months and then we can start moving on to the next phase of your financial journey of investments and savings, and kind of split it and continue to build up that emergency fund until you get to 6. And here's a key thing, guys, too. If you have to use an emergency fund, you got to replenish it. It's not going to replenish it by itself. So if you have to dip into that, you're going to have to work your way back and replenish that. The one main reason for the emergency funds is so you don't go back and have to take out debt. It goes back to the step we just talked about. Most people end up going into debt, sometimes severe debt, because of emergencies, because they don't have things to fall back on. So that's one of the main reasons for doing this. All right, so how to start an emergency fund? Well, first of all, what I highly recommend is opening two different savings accounts, one for your short term, one for your long term. I would like for you to put them in a separate bank account from your traditional normal banking checking account that you use on a daily basis. And here's why. It's not mandatory, but here's why. It's so tempting and so easy just to go online or on your phone and click transfer from your savings to your checking. Hey, I want to go buy this thing or whatever it may be. It's real tempting to be able to do that. Not that you can't do that from one account to the other in another institution, but you got to think about it for a second. You got to go to, a different app or whatever, and it just takes an extra step. Remember us talking about pausing and thinking before you make decisions. This kind of instills that pause step in the middle of it. So I love the aspect of doing a pause and thinking before you act. So that's which is one way to put a little buffer in there for you. And of course, you want to look for savings accounts that have higher annual yields or percentages. Now, traditional savings accounts have very low interest rates, right? You're not going to make a lot of money off of savings accounts. Now, interest rates are going up a little bit right now, but they're still very low. But they're low because they're liquid. You can take your money out any time. Of course, they're very low risk. There is no risk. So, but what you can do is if you can put it in online savings accounts, like your non-traditional brick and mortars, some of these banks that don't have brick and mortars, even companies like Capital One and American Express and Allied, some of these other banks, there's a ton of them. You can do research. You can go search on Bankrate. You can search on, just go out on Google and look for online savings accounts. You'll get better APYs, percentage rates on those online only non-brick and mortar savings accounts. Right now, you can I've seen them up to pushing 4%, which is pretty good. And you still have the flexibility to move things in and out. All right, so kind of going down the list here a little bit. Some of the stats, and this is held true, even though some of these stats date back a little bit, they still hold true. About 96% of Americans experience at least 4 income shocks during their lifetime. What's an income shock? Well, that's a decrease or change of 10% or greater with your income. Job loss, health issues. Severe shock is when you lose your income for a year or more. And the shocking statistic there is 61% of workers have experienced that in their lifetime, right? So it does happen. And even if hopefully you only have to go through one of those lesser shocks as income shocks, but you need to be prepared for that as well. And of course, we all go through things where we have repairs and those kind of things. Back to the short-term one. Now, unfortunately, a huge percentage of Americans are not ready for those income shocks or ready for those emergencies. Hence why our debt is so high. Back to when we're talking about the snowball methods of eliminating debt, and the numbers we throw out there are staggering, the trillions of dollars of credit card debt that are out there. So it's just huge. So nearly 6 in 10 Americans, 6 in 10, that's 60%, don't have enough to even cover $1,000 unexplained expense, right? And I understand that might be tough when you're getting going, but once you get going, you get out of debt, you get those first steps, we start you rolling and working down this plan. This is more attainable than you think, and you got to take baby steps. You got to start somewhere. And also, according by Bankrate, a study that they did, this goes back into 2017. It's gotten even worse since. Only 24% of U.S. adults said they have enough money saved for short-term emergencies. 24%. That's not a lot, right? And I know a lot of us, are following that same boat. Again, this is a process. We've been talking about a lot of things. We're going to continue to talk about a lot of different core concepts, but it's baby steps. Each of these go in sequence, and you do one after the other. It's all on your journey to that financial freedom. Going back to that treasure target, zoning in on that financial freedom target in the middle, right? We're going to revisit that some more in the coming weeks. All right. So we talked a little bit about reasons for having emergency funds. Down in this document, you're going to just see some examples just to give you some ideas, get you thought thinking. If you're a little on the fence about doing them, this is just giving you some stats and some thought processes around why you need them. Medical bills, home repair, unemployment, pet care, and up in here, there's some different stats and some things to think about. All right. What about ways to grow your emergency fund? Now, sometimes this gets a little uncomfortable for people. It kind of goes back to the same methodology as eliminating your debt, right? When we talk about eliminating your debt, sometimes that takes sacrifice, right? You got to sacrifice things to move forward in this journey. To experience that financial freedom, it's going to take some sacrifice and some discipline to get there. But once you get there, it's going to feel really, really, really good. You're going to have that freedom, and you're going to have more freedom to do things. You won't have to sacrifice as much. But it's all good practices. So let's go through a couple of these, and down at the bottom, it's going to talk a little bit about some of the sacrifices. And one thing, use your tax returns. How many people sit there and they get their tax returns and they go out and see what they can splurge on and blow it? Sure, give yourself something nice. I fully believe in the reward system, and you got to satisfy those things, but be moderate about it. Be simple about it. again, pause and think, but use your tax return. Put that towards your emergency fund. If you've already put it toward your debt and you're out of debt, I'm assuming at this phase, and what we're talking about here is that you're out of debt, or you've gotten to that point in the debt snowball that we're able to start building the emergency fund. Use your tax return. All right, that's a great. Increase your income. That sounds kind of sure, Sean. That's real easy, but who knows? Ask for a raise. But other things, find a part-time job or a side gig. Side gigs are extremely popular, and things you can do on the side just earn a little bit of money. It doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be a lot of hours. Every little dollar helps to putting it towards that, right? And I also highly encourage you though to keep that work-life balance and priorities on family and God. But if you have the margin to do it, every little bit helps, right? It may just be a few hours, a day or a week. Also, you can get on eBay and other things like that and sell things, whether it's going to yard sales and finding things to sell and turn yourself, or finding things in your house that you haven't looked at for 6 months. Go up in the attic, go up in your down in your basement, look around the things that you might not get rid of that you'd be able to sell. Again, every little dollar helps, right? And then, of course, some of the obvious things: cut expenses. Go back to your budget that you did and look at go back to your tracking and look at that tracking. Have you tracked properly? And do you know where it's going? Is there room to cut, right? Sacrifices. There may be opportunity to sacrifice. Maybe go out to eat a little bit less. You don't have that cup of coffee every single day, or whatever it may be, or you don't get that toy right away. You got to keep your eye on the prize of getting to that center of that target, right? Look at what expenses you may be able to cut down. Doesn't mean it's forever. You can constantly readjust. Remember that budget is a ever living, growing document. Simple things like keep the change when you get. Um, uh, Actually, there's some actual banks that do this. When you make a purchase, you auto round up the cents and put that rounded amount into your savings account. There's a couple banks that do that for you automatically. You can sign up for that or do it on your own. It may sound like a little, but it adds up over time. Move checking funds into savings. If you have surplus in your checking, obviously you don't want to skate by and risk going NSF and those kind of things. Not enough funds in there. But if you constantly run a surplus in there, then maybe you're doing a little bit better than you think, and you might be able to move funds over. Use a grocery shopping list. This actually helps a lot when you actually have a list. Helps you be less spontaneous. I know I'm a victim of that as well. You go to the store and you think about things and find other things, and you see other things in front of you that you want to get. They're geniuses at marketing and placement. But if you have a list, you go down that list, and it's usually a little more disciplined. And studies have shown that you end up spending less. And then simple things like shop around for better credit rates on credit cards, those kind of things. Shop around, whether it's calling your TV provider or switch TV providers, like I mentioned on your credit cards. Any services that you have where there's competition, go out and search. You may be able to find lower rates. But the biggest thing there is, again, it's back to the debt. It's the same mindset. You're going to carry right on from the debt management into this emergency fund piece to build that up. Think about your opportunity cost. You may have to make some sacrifices to get this tackled, right? But it's worth it in the end. I can promise you that. All right, let's keep on chunking down here a little bit. So I wanted to bring up one little piece about where the emergency fund is actually biblical. If you remember Joseph interpreting the dreams for Pharaoh, and this goes back to Genesis 41:34 through 36. I'm just going to read that real quick. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of the Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. The food should then be held in reserves for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by famine. So if you remember that story, remember that biblical story where Joseph interpreted those dreams and said that to the Pharaoh. This is a great example of emergency fund. Now, these days we don't keep 7 years worth. Hopefully, we never have 7 years worth of famine. So we're talking about 3 to 6 months. The more you can do, the better. You could always go back and revisit these. If you have the 6 months build up and you're doing good on your investments and retirement savings, you can always come back and build that up. Later on, when we talk about retirement, we talk about those different funds and what to use in the buckets. This is going to come into play, your cash reserves, liquidity, those kind of things. So we'll come back to that as well. But it's definitely, the Bible shows us some examples. There's other examples in there, but this is, I think, the most prominent one that comes to mind when you're talking about building an emergency fund and you're talking about biblical passages. All right. So I'm going to scroll down here, and we talked about the pursue financial freedom. All right. But on the same note, building this emergency fund allows you to take those steps toward financial freedom, to get into that target of that treasure target. That's where we all want to be. It's going to take some time to get there. It's going to take some discipline to get there, but that's where we want to be. You got to make your money work for you. Don't work for the money. You make that money work for you. You got to create that financial safety net so you don't go into debt when those emergencies happen. And if you do have to, you're going to crawl your way back out, rebuild that emergency fund, and get back on that horse to get everything back in line. Um, so once we get this emergency fund built, we're going to keep a portion of that income there. We're going to keep it going. Once we get you to a good point, then we're going to start shifting some money over to investments and savings while we continue to build up your emergency fund. Once you get to that 3 month part, we can break off and start that a little bit. Once you get to the 6 month part of savings, then we're going to have you go deeper into investments and saving for the future, right? The better you prepare for you are for life's obstacles, the better you feel, the more confidence you'll be able to attack those obstacles, right? Building that emergency fund is going to give you some peace of mind to move forward with your investment plans, with your future. Okay. All right, guys. Well, I want to touch real quick. Next week we're gonna talk about. I've got a couple more things I want to touch on, but next week we're going to talk a little bit about the 9 core principles from the Bible of verses about money. Um, and you remember the verse from Luke, where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. Luke 12:34. And out of the different 2,000 some verses in the Bible that talk about money and stewardship, it kind of breaks down into 9 principles. God owns everything. Money is about discipleship. Worship with your money. Get that money. Fight for contentment. Kill greed in your heart. Be mindful of debt. Manage your finances. More money, more problems. We're going to dive into each one of those and talk about Bible verses and what that means for each of those, right? So remember, like I said, there's over 2,000 Bible verses about money and possessions, stewardship, and whatnot. Basically, it boils down into those 9 categories. So, with 2,000 verses about it, obviously it's an important topic. We're going to talk a little bit about that more in the weeks to come, as well as why there's so many verses and why did God and Jesus talk so much about money. It's kind of crazy how it all lines up. So we're going to dive into that next week a little bit. Now, I'm super excited. After we talk about those 9 core principles, we're going to do a really, really quick recap, but then we're going to dive into some really great topics about investing, the different types of investings, the different vehicles, risk management. We're going to talk about retirement planning, what that looks like, the different phases of retirement. Because at the end of the day, we get our financial place in order. We get all this done. So when we retire, we can retire happy. We can retire and enjoy our retirement. But you got to save up to get there. You got to get these core things done, and we're going to save up for retirement. We'll also talk a little bit about different insurances. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the marketing pieces, but it all plays in. So I'm super excited about moving into those next realms. It's where a lot of my passion is, in and around investments, saving for your future. My passion is to make sure people can retire happy, that they have the retirement that they want, right? I'm super excited about talking about that. We're going to talk about that for a while because there's so many different aspects to it, and it's not a one size fits all for everybody. So we're going to talk about that. So the other thing, let me know what you guys want to hear, right? Let me know some topics that you guys are interested in. Send me a DM, put it in the comments, email me, whatever it may be. Send me topics that you want to talk about. We'll make sure we get to them. Obviously, I have the core things that I want to talk to, but there's things that may be on your mind. I want to make sure that we get to those things as well. So while we have a second here too, if you guys have questions, hit me up in the comments, down in the comments here. More than happy to take some questions as we wind down. If you don't want to put them there, hit me up on a DM. If you have my email, shoot me an email. It's Sean Maloney at retirewisepro.com, or send me a Facebook DM. Happy to answer questions and happy to help. One thing other that I'm going to mention here real quick. I know you probably saw my post out there. Let's see if I can get my mouse working again. Let me go back up here. I did launch my YouTube channel. I was going to put a little shameless plug in there. I'm putting additional content out there that there'll be a little bit overlap, but I'm going to put additional content out there as well from now going forward. There'll be some longer term content. Obviously, these live streams are being posted there. I'm going to be doing a lot of shorts, which are just 60-second videos about certain topics that just kind of get in and get out. And if there's something you want to hear about in a short as well, let me know. But hit up my YouTube channel, subscribe to that. That'd be great. You'll get some additional content there. Great. Again, let me know if you have any questions, whether it's here or down the road. Just hit me up. Also, I'm going to put in, let me juggle multiple screens here. I'm going to put in the comments. I'll put in my calendar link if you guys ever want to hit me up there. I'll put that in the comments, and I'll post it on the group as well. You can hit me up with an appointment if you want to do that. One thing I wanted to leave you with here tonight, you may have saw the post. I know our church is going through the Rick Warren book, Purpose Driven Life. I love this statement. I just want to leave this with you. Is the way you manage your money preventing God from doing more in your life, right? Is the way you manage your money preventing God from doing more in your life? Think about that for a minute. Take that as a parting message. We'll touch a little bit more on that next week as we go in the 9 core principles. Guys, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to next week. I really look forward to getting into some of these next topics, and we'll talk soon. Thanks all.